Welcome to the Scottish Business Network podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our latest SBN podcast. I'm so delighted about today's interview guest. I've known Doug for many years. We've spent time together in San Francisco, and his story of taking a Scottish tech company to the center of Silicon Valley and then building a successful company there is one that I think we can all learn from. So, Doug, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, this is I'm Doug Stevenson, originally from Kirkcaldy, also famous for Billy Connolly's "What the F's That Smell" when he got off the train in Kirkcaldy. Been in the US for 22 years with my company, came out here, and now living in San Francisco.
So, you're a Fifer then, if you're originally from Kirkcaldy.
A fly fifer, exactly.
So, what was life like getting brought up in Kirkcaldy then?
Uh, it, it was so different
Uh-huh.
to the. I'm
Because
looking.
it's on the coast and there's a beach and everything, so very similar
It
to
is, it
California.
is. It's very beautiful. You got the beautiful North Sea nearby and sort of
Uh-huh.
oil rigs. But you know what? When you're growing up, it was all amazing
Yeah.
because we had these Wraith Woods nearby, so we could hang out and play in the woods, and we had the North Sea nearby, and the what was it called? I can't remember the name of it now, but all the way down there, and we just hang out down by the ocean with the waves crashing
Uh-huh.
and get soaking wet, and it was great. It was a great time. My father was an engineer, and the reason we were in Kirkcaldy is he had his office in Glenrothes.
At somewhere I worked myself for some time.
Yeah.
So grew up in Kirkcaldy, and then where did you go to study?
Yeah, I went to Boweri High School in
Uh-huh.
Kirkcaldy, and
Yep.
then after that went to Edinburgh University, so not far away, 22 miles away, really, across the River Forth over to
Yeah.
Edinburgh. And I studied engineering. Because my dad was an amazing
Yeah.
engineer, I'd actually wanted to be a doctor or to do biotechnology, but it was a
Uh-huh.
little bit too early to do that degree, which would have meant I would have had to do a 7 year uh, biochemistry degree. And so I did engineering. My dad was doing such pioneering work. He invented the first one chip calculator, and was
Oh,
really successful.
wow.
So all the stuff I was hearing university was like, he's like, oh, really? So it was really hard to compete because I was telling him the stuff we were doing, and he's like, yeah, that's yeah.
So you graduate from university, and then where was your first career role about?
Yeah, I was actually a little bit lost after I graduated from university because um, I didn't know if I wanted to live in Scotland or where. And my
Uh-huh.
dad was kind enough to give me it was like £1,000. It was like,
Uh-huh.
and he said, off to London with you.
Right.
And so my mum and dad were divorced, but my dad was kind of watching me kind of like struggle and say, well, what's he going to end up doing? And so I stayed in a bed and breakfast down in London and applied to some publishing companies,
Uh-huh.
and I ended up working with a company called Haymarket Publishing
Oh
in
yeah.
London. I worked on Marketing Magazine of all things.
So sorry. Just to interrupt.
Yeah,
How do you get a job there with an engineering degree?
I know. How did I?
Ah.
I think because of my windswept personality.
Oh, okay.
Um, and
It's
so they were
fantastic.
they were essentially just looking for uh, trainee salespeople, I suppose,
Okay.
on the magazine. And I didn't really. I had done a summer job at an engineering company called
Uh-huh.
STL, and
Yep.
they were called Standard Telecommunications Laboratories. In fact, what they were doing at the time was amazing, but I just didn't feel like I was as good an engineer as they had around. They were doing this. They were doing video conferencing, and they were delivering 1 or 2 frames per per second, I think, and
Right.
like going like, oh, did we get it? Did we get that 1 frame? And it's like so it's really amazing to be here on very fluid video conferencing compared to then. But that so yeah, I did that engineering stint, and that was in Harlow.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then yeah, I just sort of changed into working for marketing and Campaign magazine, and then being in the advertising industry in London, in the publishing industry during the kind of early 90s,
Oh, wow.
and that whole experience, which was really amazing. And then I was able to join CompuServe and
Uh-huh.
AOL, and kind of that's where I got into the internet and
So you were there on the first wave.
yeah, but you know what? I didn't feel like it was the first wave. My
Uh-huh.
father was so into tech and
Uh-huh.
so far ahead. He had a company called, he had some interesting companies, but one of them was a remote control record player called Accutrack,
Right.
ADC Accutrack. And it was the world's first ever remote control record player. And you would just press a button and it would be using I think it was infrared. It kind of like fire red infrared signals at the LP, and it
Uh-huh.
would see that the vinyl was slightly different where the grooves were, and
Yeah.
you could just press 6 and it goes to track 6, press 1, it goes to track 1.
Wow.
And my mates were all like, wow, what is that? And so that was really awesome. What he discovered though was that it was there was some really good engineering to do that, but he worked with a company that was more of mass manufacturing, so
Hmm.
the decks weren't all that. So then he created another company called X10, which was in Seattle. I went over to Seattle and was able to spend some time with him there, and he kind of walked me through Mary Meeker's first internet report back in
Wow.
'97.
Wow.
And in there, it showed the growth trends of online advertising. And
Uh-huh.
given my advertising background, working AOL and CompuServe, well, that was just about to come actually. Uh, you could see these numbers, and Amazon, of course, was going crazy in Seattle. DoubleClick had just gone public,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, so then I got a job in the UK at CompuServe, and then with AOL, and that's how I got into online.
So tell us about the entrepreneurial journey, that step you take when you decide that it's time to come off the salary and to start making this happen yourself. What was the inspiration for that? And then your journey from the UK to the US.
Yeah, I remember it really, really clearly. It was I think it might have even been, yeah, it was my brother's having his first kid,
Uh-huh.
and my brother was in the US. I was in rainy Shepherd's Bush or Hammersmith in
Uh-huh.
London. And I took 3 or 4 days off work at AOL, and I thought, wow, I've got to come up with a business idea because everyone would come to us and
Yeah.
say, hey, we've got this idea, we've raised, £5 million,
Yeah.
and we want to advertise with you at AOL. And and so I came up with this idea called Go Business Now,
Uh-huh.
and I created a business plan for it. I gave it to the legal counsel at AOL and I said, what do you think? He said, it looks great. I'll give it to my uncle. He knows all about small businesses. And he said, it comes back on the Monday. And I said, well, what do you think? He said, he says you should change the name of the company. And I said, what should I change it to? He said, Go Broke Now.
Charming.
So that was some honest feedback on my first
Yeah.
business plan.
Yeah.
And so I went, it turns out that became quite a valuable URL. I did have it for a
Uh-huh.
while and I ended up passing it on. But I also had a couple of different URLs. One was called B2B Click
Uh-huh.
after double click, and
Yeah.
also had Vibrant Media.
Right.
And I picked the word vibrant because of energy.
Yeah.
And I thought anything to do with the word. And there was also a company I like called Imagine Media.
Hmm.
And they had done well with Chris Anderson, who, and also someone I'd worked with called Johnny Simpson Bint,
Hmm.
had gone out to San Francisco and built this company called Imagine Media. So I kind of thought that would be sensible. And the person I was working with at AOL, I said, let's go out and start pitching our own advertising business.
Uh-huh.
It'll be a contextual or targeted advertising.
Yeah.
And myself and a third partner went out to start pitching, but it was just during the dot-com bust.
Uh-huh.
So we were pitching at end of 99,
Okay.
and then as we were going into 2000, the Nasdaq had its worst day in
Yeah.
March the 11th, 2000.
Yeah.
And we went to see big name VCs, went to see 50 venture capitalists.
Uh-huh.
And they'd say things like, "Do you think this is just a correction?" And I'd go, "Yeah, this is bound to be a correction." We don't think so. We think this is a big issue. And of course, that was the meltdown.
Yeah.
But on the last, this was amazing. It was our last chance. Like the window was closing.
Uh-huh.
I was looking at a house that was being built near us and saying, if that house gets built before us, we'll have to go back to get a regular job because
Yeah.
we left AOL
Yeah.
um, and then it was looking like it was going to get built. And on the last investment possibility, an incubator called Gorilla Park,
Right.
who were like the Idea Lab for Europe, said, "Tell us your idea." And the founder there, Jerome Mall, listened to us and he said, "I'm not sure about your idea." People said that a lot to us, by the way.
Uh,
Said, "We like you guys."
yeah. Yeah.
And, I think that's a great investment strategy is to look at the management team.
Yeah.
And sometimes the idea will evolve
Yeah.
as they're in practice.
So you got some money, you got started, and then quite quickly you went to California.
Yeah, and just sheer naivety. Um, you know, again, the business planning was really that my brother was in San Francisco
Uh-huh.
and I had been out to the US, from an early age and just felt like my father will always say an amazing market. There's just so many people in the US
Yeah.
and so much. I think 30% of the world's consumption happens in the US, even though it's only 4% of the population.
Yeah.
So, from a business perspective, it seemed to make sense. So, myself and my co-founder flew out on Virgin Atlantic and arrived in San Francisco. We stayed at our investor's house down near Palo Alto,
Yeah.
and we arranged 20 meetings in 1 week
Uh-huh.
and just went to one meeting after another and told our story about what we're trying to do. And we met this guy who was editor of Upside magazine at the time, and he
Uh-huh.
said, "Geez, you guys are zagging when everyone else is zigging," meaning no
Okay.
one's no one's here because
Yeah.
everyone had been all of the companies were being closed down because it was the dot-com
Yeah.
bust at that time. So it was a really good time to actually go to
Yep.
San Francisco. We went to see some ad agencies. We got some angel investors in the UK, and what they said is, "Hey, American investors will be, or American advertisers, people will be enthusiastic, but make sure you get them to sign a check."
Hmm.
And the first uh, commercial deal we did in the US was with Hewlett Packard,
Wow.
Yeah, through their advertising agency. And the second one was with Oracle and we with their advertising agency, Universal McCann, and that we just faxed the contracts back to
Uh-huh.
our angel investors, and they said, "Well, you can stay another month."
So tell us just briefly the journey of that company and through to the because the arc of success that you experienced. So that any kind of numbers you can share about the number of staff or the turnover, things like that, just to give us a scale of what you were able to achieve.
Yeah, yeah, it was an amazing journey. We started in July 2000. It was when we started the company, and within 10 years of the company, we reached 120 million in revenues, 20% EBITDA margins,
Uh-huh.
um, and about 100 and I don't know 130, 140 people at that point.
Hmm.
Um, and had offices in London, New York, San Francisco, Detroit, LA, and yeah, wherever there was a need for having a hub around advertising,
Yeah.
we'd have people in those locations, and yeah, it was such a fast ride, in terms of what we were doing. I think again, it's the importance of getting into a market at just the right
Yeah.
time. I mean, online advertising, I thought we were late to online advertising
Yeah.
because we worked at AOL
Uh-huh.
and they'd already gone public. DoubleClick had already gone public,
Uh-huh.
and there was all these other companies out there. And I just thought we were late, but the timing was brilliant because people were looking for targeted contextual advertising solution. So we were analyzing content
Yeah.
and matching the most relevant adverts to the page. We believe that advertising works if it was relevant.
Yeah.
If it's irrelevant, then that's not so good, but make it targeted to whatever the content is, analyze the content. So we really pioneered the whole notion of very targeted advertising. And then Google created AdSense,
Hmm.
which they used, well, they bought a company from Palo Alto, um, to plug into their AdSense contextual targeting technology.
And this is your interest in data and AI starting to expand then as well. But just take us to the end of the company. What was the culmination moment?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the combination was, I guess, private equity.
Uh-huh.
So private equity coming in and putting primary capital and secondary capital for us as
Uh-huh.
a company. And then that allowed us to expand our
Yeah.
sales team.
Yeah.
So what we started, I guess, our two bold moves that we
Yep.
made, because I heard someone talking about this recently, is our first big bold move was the naive move to the US
Yeah.
without major planning. That was the right thing to do. And the second thing was expanding from the technology vertical into the automotive,
Hmm.
financial, fast-moving consumer goods. You name it, we kind of went across all of the verticals. And in
Yeah.
doing so, then that meant if we had an advertising agency relationship, we could work through all of their portfolio of products and brands they had. But yeah, so it was a 23-year-old company, and we delivered over $1 billion of revenue over the 23-year journey, and hired over 1,000 people in the German market, the French market, UK market, and US, and some international as well. So yeah, it gave us a really good chance to get a flavor of um, advertising at a global scale.
And when did you move on to this next stage of your career?
Yeah, that was about a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I felt like coaching was something that I always kind of did with, whether it be with people in the company.
Yeah.
And I'd also gotten to know BJ Fogg through Stanford
Uh-huh.
and Tiny Habits and the behavioral design he does in Healdsburg and the principles of that. And I had also worked with a CEO coach myself. So I'd have my own coach and also um, a client I was working with, and I was an investor in the company. They did psychometrics, and I got really interested in that. And then, really, over the last couple of years, just got invested more and more time and energy in learning about coaching and then helping CEOs and founders in particular, and then particular themes like the one around conflict,
Mhm.
so founder conflict in particular, because 65% of companies fail
Yeah.
because of conflict. And sometimes that's a conflict continuum where it's artificial harmony, and at the other end it's mean-spirited personal attack. So it's finding
Uh-huh.
that sweet spot of productive conflict, and that's because there's a good foundation of trust.
And I think what you do is quite unique in the market because you're working with leading CEOs of fast-growing companies, but you've done it yourself, and you've done it in what must be the most exciting market we've seen this century. When you've built this and you've seen everything that's happened in California and Silicon Valley, and then built a global company from there. So, do you think that if you hadn't taken that first bold step and moved to America, do you think you could have built it in London?
That's a great question. I I think so. I think so. But it would have been. I think it's just a smaller market opportunity,
Yep. Yeah.
and it just felt like there's so many great synergies between the British and American,
Yeah.
and I loved the fact that Vibrant Media had Germans and
Uh-huh.
French and
Yeah.
British, that's a melting pot of sensibilities. And you end up with better decisions, I think, having, as we've talked about, the discernment that Brits have and the enthusiasm that Americans have, and you mix that together, you end up with a good energy.
So that's really insightful to hear it's laid out like that. So today you're working because I know you're working with some of the companies I know. You're opening up your experience, your expertise as a coach, but also your networks, and you're sitting there in California. So do you think the opportunities are still there for UK or in our case Scottish companies to come in and to seize market opportunities?
Yeah, there
Yeah,
really are lots of great opportunities,
yeah,
and the great thing about I think the American market is people allow you to come in and try things,
yeah.
and I think people like British people, and the education, from the UK is awesome, and especially around AI right now, there's just so much opportunity to come in with different technology solutions. The fact I didn't have video conferencing right in my day.
Yeah. Yeah,
So it was just the telephone. So all of those calls were booked
yeah,
just from London with an 8-hour time difference.
yeah,
The fact is, I can be on a video conference call with someone in India,
yeah.
uh, and and the UK, and so it's better. It's easier in some ways than ever to be working operating in the US as well as the UK.
I agree with that. I noticed it during lockdown with COVID that this relationship between my digital image and your digital image doesn't affect the relationship developing. And you've been such a supporter of Scottish Business Network in California, and we've brought companies out who you've helped. But I think we need to be utilizing your skills more. So that's what we're going to hopefully do together going forward. And I'm hoping this is going to encourage more, my bias, Scottish tech companies to reach out and speak to you. So the market opportunities, because I think of you whenever I think of data or AI, because you've been playing in that space for way longer than most of the people I know. So where do you see the opportunities at the moment? So if someone's sitting with their spin out, they've maybe just their spin out or a company they've developed, they've just raised their first 3 or 4 million. Where do you see that the opportunities in the US? Is it just across the board, or is it in particular sectors or particular ideas you think is an opportunity?
Well, if we're looking at accelerating the business
Yep,
in terms of investment, 60% of all of the investment happens in the US. So
yep,
global investment is in the US. So if you're looking to, get your seed funding or Series A funding, Series B funding, certainly the Bay Area is a good place to be for that, and there's certainly a lot of early stage investors here as well. But again, in terms of large enterprises, there's all sorts of opportunities in the New York market or in California market, right across the board. And yeah, it just depends on the market sector you're focused on. But
great.
certainly from a tech perspective, Silicon Valley's got a lot to offer.
That's fantastic. And then finally, just to talk about this issue of leadership. So one of the core roles within any enterprise, particularly during its early years, is this role of the leader. And you've studied this in depth, particularly the leader of a technology venture. Do you think there are different challenges that technology CEOs are facing today, and perhaps actions that they should be considering taking?
Say that question again.
So, if I'm the CEO of an early stage tech company based in the UK, I'm dealing with a lot of open issues all the time. When you look at the way you see people running businesses in the UK to the US, do you think, for example, that a UK CEO is focusing their time on the right things? Do you think they are pulling in the right people as advisors? Or are they more managing rather than leading? And it's interesting that the difference between how you see it happening in the UK and the US.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that is interesting. I probably don't have as much experience on nowadays in terms of how people are doing things in the UK.
Uh-huh.
But I would say that the best practices would be to, you know, for depending on the stage of the company, but for the CEO to be very much in the market and very
Yep.
much out with customers,
So visible.
very visible in the marketplace, and yeah, so I think that would be the key there. What would I say that be, but
So
yeah,
just to explore that one a little
yeah,
bit. So what I see so I worked in Silicon Valley in 98, 99, and I was educated in that way that you had to be present in the market.
yeah,
And what I worry about in the UK a little bit is people who are running companies, but they're doing it from behind the desk. And
right.
I encourage them all that they have to be out there in the market. You have to be meeting with the potential customers, attending the events, speaking. You have to be there and present. You have to be pushing stuff out on social media, etc., to talk about your understanding of the market, because otherwise you're a bit invisible. And I know you're a great proponent of this about, being visible in the market.
Yeah, yeah. There's a guy called Steve Blank who
Uh-huh.
did a lot about helping startups, and the first thing he says is get out of the building.
Yeah,
So, be out with customers. Quite a
great.
lot of people are talking about this right now is to get as many customer meetings as you can and ask them to look at the workflow that they're in right now,
Yeah,
because you might be able to improve their current
yeah,
workflow.
yeah.
So my father always used to say this is he says your customers will tell you their problems.
Yep, yeah,
And so I can manufacture your problem and think, oh yeah, this is your problem. But until I start speaking to real customers and seeing how they're interacting with my products, then I can then keep iterating and pivoting and moving to where the real opportunity is.
and this is one of the areas where I think having a coach by my side is so important, because it's about how do I develop the level of trust with these potential customers so they're willing to share their problems. And I know that that's a whole different area, but I think that's what I don't think of myself as a salesperson. I think I'm a problem hunter. I want to hear about the challenges people face just in case I know someone in my network who can help them address those. And I
Yeah.
think you're right, as many meetings as possible. And particularly if you can do these face to face or you have supporters around the world who can do those meetings for you.
Yeah, yeah, and then you become a really great pattern matcher, and you
Yep.
you see all these different patterns, and you can then
Brilliant.
match those CEOs together, and yeah, then you just build up this really helpful network where you can go back and ask them their advice on it, and it really makes the job. One of the things that The Economist had a big campaign years ago. I don't know if
Uh-huh.
you remember it. It's lonely at the top,
Yeah.
but at least you've got something to read. You know,
But
there's a
I loved your use of the word pattern. You
yeah,
know, the fact that we're speaking to a number of customers because we're trying to spot some commonality of
yeah,
pattern in what they're doing. That is a brilliant concept. Thank you for that.
yeah. So that is, and that's what I guess entrepreneurs do. They look
Uh,
for the pattern amongst all
yep.
the
Yeah.
noise. So where's
Yeah.
the signal? And that's an engineering thing, is the
Uh-huh.
signal to noise ratio. So by being out with, so the job of a really good entrepreneur is to listen really carefully for the signal and go to the right people. And the great thing is if you're a problem solver and you're the type of people will invite you in to their
Yeah.
workflow and give you their ideas.
Well, that's a brilliant way to sum this chat up, Doug. That look out, listen out for the signal, be the problem solver, match those patterns, and utilize the networks that people like you and I and our colleagues all have as well to help open those doors. But get out of the office. Thank you very much, Doug. Great to speak
Thanks.
to you.
Thanks, Russell. That's awesome.
Thank you now.